What does it take to be a full-time caddy at a bucket list resort like Bandon Dunes? What's life like? How does it work? And what do you need to know as a golfer if you're going to have a caddy? Renaissance woman Sara Jo Royalty joins us to tell us all that and more, including her fascinating backstory and side gigs. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I found a new editing software that removes ums, ahs, and pauses, but it creates jump cuts. So I have not learned all the skills to blend and cover all those, so I'm publishing something that I really love the sound of and the pace of, that is also available wherever you get your podcasts, in case you find that distracting here on video. But I've been sitting on this wonderful episode with Sara Jo for long enough, and I want you to enjoy it too. The FLG Golf Podcast for now is about progress and not perfection, so please subscribe to come on that journey with us and enjoy this Caddy Confidential with Sara Jo. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the FLG Golf Podcast. I am very pleased to be joined today by Sara Jo Royalty. Sara, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sara is in a profession in golf, a role that is often romanticized but not often well understood, and that is the life of a caddy. The FLG Golf Podcast exists to kind of shine a light on those lives that exist outside of the professional tours, because that is the world of golf that I exist in. And I think if you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, you exist in that world also. And Sara Jo has found a calling in that world of golf, but that is not her only discipline, not her only profession. Sara Jo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself personally and professionally?
I'm a golf caddy at Bandon Dunes Golf Resort, which is on the southern Oregon coast. If you are in golf, you know Bandon. I know last year it was #1 public resort in the world, which is huge. It's definitely the Disney World of golf and a golf mecca. Over half our clientele coming there are for a bucket list trip. I also caddy down in the desert at a couple private clubs that are, the Corey is hands down the best actual golf in the desert, California desert. And the Madison Club is, it's super bougie. That might be the highest in place that you could belong down there. There's definitely a couple other contenders. And I have caddied for amateurs on the tour during the Pro-Am, but most of the time I'm at Bandon. My other career is I say I work in the fly fishing industry. I'm on the board of Fly Fishers International as our state liaison, so I spend a lot of time visiting other nonprofits and events or fly clubs. One of our main missions is to be glue, so I like to say, and just really facilitate other nonprofits so that we can get our statewide goals done together.
Now, when we first met, I thought that I was going to be super focused on your life as a caddy, but the world of a professional fly fisher woman? How do you call yourself?
Fly fisherman. Yeah, I call myself
a fly fisherman.
Yeah, that involves a lot of hats. So I'm on the Daiichi fishing team. My newest is Semperfly. Semperfly is my newest fly fishing sponsor. They're in the UK, so that's pretty big because that's an international sponsor for me. And then Dr. Slicks is the tools. I'm actually at my bench right now. Here, I'm just doing this. You can see my whole bench. These are all my scissors from Dr. Slick, right? And and then I had all the spools and stuff. That's all from Semperfly. And then TFL Rods and Reels is the main rod and reel company that I fish for. I'm testing product and relaying back. I'm making a lot of public appearance. Public appearance is like a big part of it. Hey, we're doing film festival. We need you to sit at the booth and tie flies. Hey, there's an expo. Like, we need a face, And so I travel and do a lot of that. And then, post on Instagram. That's another big one. Tie your flies, take a picture, put it on Instagram, put our watermark on it.
I see there's also a footwear brand that you're sponsored by for fly fishing.
Porkers, which are the wading boots, which I love. I destroy things. I'm a great product tester because if something outlasts me, it's going to last. Yeah. And then beyond that, like the underdog, I hate to say the underdog of them all, but reality is the waders. So this company, Aquaz, AQUAZ, used to just manufacture waders.
I've heard of professional fishermen and fisherwomen before, but I would consider that to be like, oh, there's a bass fishing tournament.
I personally have never done that particular type of competition. I've done fly tying and then fly casting competition. I spend a lot of time fly fishing, and I am a licensed guide, so I do some guiding, but I am busy, and I would never want to guide full time. I mean, if you think caddying's hard, I almost think guiding's harder. I mean, maybe not physically, but the hours and just kind of, it's just a grueling thing. You get up, you get the boat ready, you pack the lunches, you tie the flies, you rig rods, then you just tie knots and re-rig all day. Trying to get people to fish who really maybe have no business.
It's probably the same for golfers as well, to be honest.
I feel like guiding is like showing up to the golf course with a set of clubs and being like, I've never played this game before. Let's go. And you're like, geez, okay. So I'm like, I like the caddying, but I do like the guiding, but more in spurts.
Scrolling through your Instagram page here, this is on the right is your Insta for Sara Jo Flies. This is beautiful.
Thank
so
you.
Aside from being a professional caddy and a professional fly fisherman, you were also a former musician.
I don't know if I'm former. I just released a single on Spotify like last week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And is that under your name, Sara Jo Royalty?
Yeah, Sara Jo. I did release an album like maybe 20 years ago, maybe a little less, somewhere around 20 years ago. And it sold pretty well, and that was when I lived on the East Coast. And then I moved out here and had kids and did other things. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I'd struggle with that. Do I need a band? What do I want to do here? Then I recorded with a band, and I didn't like the band. I didn't like the drums. So I trashed that. It's just kind of, I've actually recorded another album since, but I just never released it because I wasn't really happy with it. So now I kind of go back and forth. So I decided I'm going Bob Dylan. I'm just going to do everything acoustic. I'm going to release everything that way initially, and then I'll go back and try to do some of the things I want to do, or maybe people will see it, want to collab or whatever. So, and I'm starting to play out here. I figure I'm not going to carry bags forever, so I'm just moving back into the music a little bit. Yeah. But I've been doing that since I was 3. I've been doing that my whole life. That's probably the thing I am the most, is a musician.
So, gosh, where do we go next? There's so many directions. Why don't you give us 2 truths and a lie about yourself?
I lived with no electricity or running water for 8 years. I played college golf. And my son is a professional knife thrower.
Goodness.
My golfers helped me with this week. My golfers of 11 years, I was like, guys, I need help.
I want to say that your son is not a professional knife thrower. I would like to say that that's a lie. The disciplines that you've chosen to pursue in life, I can imagine you not living with electricity for 8 years. Does your son throw knives for a living?
He has a mild sponsorship for throwing butterfly knives.
Those are the ones that you flip around, right?
Yeah,
they look like a nutcracker. Okay, got it. How could you say no as a mom to a profession like that? Your chosen professions are fly fishing and golf.
Oh, I thought it was amazing. I was like, chip off the old block. You're already sponsored. I just thought it was incredible.
Is it like Olympic diving or gymnastic disciplines where you have certain things that you have to show you have skill in a routine or something like that?
Yeah, gymnastic routine would be the best way to describe that. And it's like the artist, subject to the artist's like capability, and artistic ability, in the air, catching it behind his back, doing all sorts of. Oh yeah.
Jeebus.
Well, and it's funny because I was nervous about him having a live play, but it's like, he's been practicing. And so I asked some of the other kids, I was like, as a mother, I just see him throwing it up in the air, trying to catch it, but instead it just, it stabs him and he bleeds out. And that's, he's gone. I'm like, obviously I think of the worst thing possible. And everybody was like, the odds of that happening are about 0.5%. Like nobody ever hurts themselves that way. They just like nick their nails and their fingers. I mean, we go through a lot of Band-Aids.
I've got a 6-year-old girl, and she is into more traditional pursuits like dance and music, and Not
Mhm.
necessarily athletic, but I dream of one day her, actually wanting to come play golf with dad. And I guess as parents, we think about we want our child to be athletic. We want them to be confident. We want them to have
Mhm.
friends that they see are motivated to do things that they enjoy and love and to find something. And I guess it doesn't really matter what that thing is. You want your kid to have confidence. You want them to have a personal identity. You want them to be surrounded by other people who are motivated to get better at something, whether that's building Lego or doing Rubik's Cubes or stacking cups or throwing knives or playing golf or dancing. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as it's what they get from it, right? Cultivating the art of practice is extremely difficult for a young person, and whatever they find, I guess you have to encourage because it gives them the skills to get through life.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the toughest thing that I've noticed is like my oldest has dabbled in everything, but he's not in love with anything yet. And he's like, no, I just haven't found my thing yet. He just knows he's still looking for it, you know?
So, how did you find your things? How did you find these loves that you have now?
I mean, the music has been my whole life. I mean, that's just always been there. I paid for the college that I paid for that with my voice scholarship. So that was helpful.
So we actually
Uh,
didn't finish your two truths and a lie. I'm sorry.
oh,
So
oh,
were
I
you
might
not
have
a
just
college
gave it
golfer then?
away. I
Yeah.
might have just gave it away. So my college story is kind of weird. I went to the community college here
Yeah.
and I had a choice between a vocal and a soccer scholarship actually. And I chose the vocal because I wanted to be a science major. And the
Hmm.
soccer practice is always during the science classes. But the athletes are not scientists.
Yes.
I knew I was going to do something medical. And the reason why I knew that is because beforehand, I had gone to Sudan, and when I went to Sudan, they gave me a malaria vaccine that
Hmm.
was expired. So I was injected with a man-made mutated bacteria that reprogrammed all my organs to collect disease, and then I had MS and lupus and Epstein-Barr
Oh
and
my
Lyme disease.
goodness.
And they're like, we can't help you. So I was like, well, I'll go help myself. So I went to school. So
Yeah.
I went to go finish my last year at Oregon State. And then it was like, I was just to a point where I was like kind of too sick to continue. And so I
Wow.
decided, well, now's a good time to stop.
That's a hell of a journey for a young person to go on, like to suffer
Yeah,
so many
not to go dark,
illnesses
but
and
that's
yeah.
why my education, what it is. So I
Okay.
graduated high school when I was 16 and I then moved to North Carolina. And that's when I lived on a sailboat for 8 years with no electricity or running water. And I did commercial fishing. That's kind of where the fly fishing merged.
Okay. Is that where you picked up golf? Or where did your golfing
No,
journey begin?
I came out to Oregon for fishing, really. I didn't golf at all. I remember I would meet people around the area, people who were caddies, and it's like we'd be like maybe at the bar having a drink, and they'd be asking me, questions about like where I came from, and I'd be like maybe telling some crazy story about how somebody's flying off the boat, and they're like, "Why don't you caddy?" And I'm like, "Are you even listening?
But fisher
What are you
people are
talking?"
also golf people, are they not? They sound so kindred, you know?
Yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I always thought it was so odd. I mean, now I understand, when I say I'm a sailor and they're like, why don't you caddy? What they mean is, well, you know the wind more than anybody else. If
Yeah.
I'm talking about science and they know how much I understand ballistics, they're like, why don't you caddy? And then being in customer service, being able to read people,
Yeah.
and then just like needing to do physical activity for a job. So it was those aspects where people are like, why don't you caddy?
Give me a mini course review of Bandon. Maybe your favorite course at Bandon and why.
Mm. Oh, my favorite is Trails by a long shot.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Core Crenshaw design in general. That course has optical illusions and target yardage shots, and it has everything. And it's in the woods. It is just off the ocean, so it's not on the cliffs the way the other ones are. But I think that if it was located in Central Oregon, it would get a higher rating. I think it's
Hmm.
the only reason it gets a lower rating is because it's not directly on the ocean.
From a caddy's perspective, what architecture don't you like?
I mean, I think a lot of us would say Tom Doak. We are not a fan of Tom Doak out there. And he's done the majority of our courses. I mean, he did Pacific Dunes, which is very highly rated. in
Yeah.
Old Mac, which I do love, but the results are too varying. For instance,
Yeah.
it's like my guy hit the fairway the other day, and because there was a crazy mound like this in the fairway, which I like undulation, it hit the side of a mound and then shot so deep into the rough that we never saw it again.
That
He hit
seems
the
unfair.
fairway, and
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I was like, are you kidding me right now? There's a lot of unreasonable bounces like that out there. And it
So it
can
sounds like
really
there's a
just,
difference between like difficulty and fairness, right? Building a
yes,
difficult course with lots of hazards and landing areas is fine. But building an unfair
correct.
course where a good shot is not rewarded or it's penalized heavily is not the ideal.
And that's what like my players are like, so tell me about Pacific Dunes. I'm like, welcome to Pacific Dunes. Go fuck yourself. Like that's what I say. All the first timers choose Pacific.
Yeah.
And then
Interesting.
as time goes by and they play that course more, they're like, it starts to drop down the list. Also, I remember one time one of our caddies commented on a forum on Instagram, and he said, Tom Doak, he tagged Tom Doak, and he said, why is Pacific unplayable in a south wind? And
Mm.
Tom Doak responded, because 57% of the time the wind is out of the northwest. I see that as a gigantic
That's
flaw
not enough.
in the
Yeah.
designer's work. And I know people would be like, Sarah, how dare you roast Tom Doak? But
Yeah.
I am, because the reason why I am is because if you go over to Bandon Dunes, what David Kitt did was made the course completely playable in two winds. And what he really did is he made two separate courses on one course
Yeah.
for the south wind and the north wind. And it is such a genius design. And it's like, I'm sorry, if you're going to be a world-class designer, you need to design for the other 43% of the time. So we just
You're
not
here.
supposed to play 43% of the time? Come on. Nonsense.
How many strokes do you think that you save a golfer a round?
That can vary. I would say we're going to save the most for someone like between a 13 and a 17 handicap. We'll probably save the most strokes for.
Yeah.
But one thing I notice is, it's interesting how many people have management problems with their game. I have no idea how many times I've had a mid-handicapper or like somebody in their 20s say, I just had the best round of my life. And it's
With you.
because, yeah, or
Yeah.
any caddy out there. It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be
sure.
just me, because, they're like always grabbing the ball. I want to be long. No, you want to be short here. Or like, no,
Yeah.
I've seen you hit that club a bunch of times. I jokingly have a 3-strike policy with wedges. If you're like duff, skull fuck, I'm like, we're done. And then I loft you until you can work something, I'm like, okay, this 58, we're done with that. Here's your 54. Oh, you're still doing
Yeah.
the 54? Yeah, we're not using that one anymore. Here's your 50. Oh,
Yeah.
you're stuck with a pitching wedge. That's too bad. I'm not doing this all
You're
week.
like, I don't want to chase that ball around the back of the
Also, I'm like,
green
what are we doing
anymore.
here? I work less if you get the ball in the hole sooner. Like, this is a symbiotic relationship. And
So are you ever coaching on technique, or is it
well,
really just more course
really,
management?
We really try to stay out of technique. I mean, we
Yeah.
only deal with technique when, again, it's affecting us too much.
There's also not much you can do for someone who's in the middle of a round and having a shocking round.
It really is, if you're like having that repetitive mistake that maybe isn't normal, or that's like the one thing you always fall into that you need a reminder. It's like, for sure we'll say something, but it depends on the situation every time. That's where like reading the room is huge, because I see some caddies and they always want to give golf tips, and it's like, a lot of guys want it and love it, because they're like on YouTube every day, or like, golf tip, golf.
Yeah.
Like,
you get repeat business. Do you have people who
yeah.
are like, I need Sara Jo because for whatever reason?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. I noticed that I had 50% of my work or more was like annual returns until our reservations went to 2 years out.
Oh, interesting.
And then it dropped to like almost 25% because people have a hard time booking. Sometimes they just, I don't know, they just have a hard time with that 2-year out reservation as opposed to a year.
And that's just because of how popular Bandon has become as like a bucket list golf destination.
Yeah. And so now we're on a lottery system.
Oh.
So you have all these time slots throughout the year, and you apply for a lottery for a time slot to be able to book tee times and have a trip. So now people who have been coming for 15 years can't book their regular trip at the resort because of the lottery system. But we still get a lot of referrals like, oh, my friend had you. He said I had to take you, you know.
So there's so much stuff that I want to talk about. I'm just going to list them here and you can decide which one you want to talk about first. I want to talk about life as an actual caddy. I would love to hear about that commercial side, that like, you know, you're talking about how the bookings work and how frustrating that process can be. Because for someone out there who's thinking about getting into life as a caddy, it's how do you manage life? How do you manage schedules? Like what is it like, you know, being a caddy and, you know, getting compensated for it? But then there's also stuff I want to talk about. What are the types of golfers that you get? What are the types of caddies that you get? Like that sort of culture also.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Well, to be a caddy, or at least to be one at Bandon Dunes and probably anywhere, you're talking about being a persona and selling that persona. It's really kind of a show. These people are on vacation. They're here to have a good time. They want, and a lot of them expect banter.
They want a
Like
caddy
the way that
experience, or
caddies
how they
talk
imagine a
shit.
caddy experience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Or how they've seen it on TV or whatever, or how they've heard
yeah,
about some of these crazy stories they hear on Instagram.
yeah,
If you can pull that off consistently and have a good time and make jokes, being funny, it's honestly like pretty important. They got to hear
yeah,
some funny stuff. I mean, I got a couple, and some of it's pretty stock, right? Like you're working with
yeah,
caddies and you're like, he tells that joke every round. As a female caddy, I cannot make mistakes. You know, if you're a dude, you can be like, oh, you pushed it. Oh, sorry, bad caddy read. Oh,
yeah,
I can't do that. I have to have perfect yardage and perfect putt reads. I mean, if you're off a couple of times in a round, you're kind of toast.
So do you get the same rate for, like, how do you set your rates? And I guess does your
Ooh.
income vary? Is it based on tips, or is there like a seniority level?
I file a Schedule C. I'm an independent contractor. I 100% am my own business. Um, because I've been at the shack for 13 years, because I've never whiffed, you know, we call it whiffing when we miss a loop or don't show up
Yeah,
for a loop. And like, I've never, you know, had any major issues. Frankly, just even had a lot of guests writing in and being like, she was perfect green reads, fantastic yardage.
showmanship aspect of it. Yeah,
So
yeah,
at the shack, like, because I've been there so long and I'm, you know, they know I'm going to show up and they know that nobody's going to fire me. Like, you can fire your caddy. And I hate to say that, I heavily encourage it. Like, if you get
hmm
on your trip and you get a caddy who is terrible, please get a new one and don't ruin your whole trip by having him for 4 entire days.
Great
Like,
tip.
just get somebody else. There's
Yeah,
plenty of people. And honestly, we do not want that person with a bunch of other customers. So it's like, your feedback, however negative, is important. There are going to be people who just don't want a female or just don't want a smart ass, or I don't know. And they're like, hey, his yardage is good. I just don't, I don't want to talk at all. Can you
yeah,
give me a quiet caddy
yeah.
or whatever it is? I mean, it is my job to read the room and be a chameleon.
When you say fired, you're not talking about this is the end of their career at Bandon. You're just talking about they get
Fired by
unassigned
a
from a certain
guest.
golfer. Yeah, yeah,
Fired by a
okay.
guest. So at the resort, when you show up, if you have 5 days of golf, however, if and you're playing 36 every day, you're gonna have the same caddy for all the rounds.
Yeah,
They want to keep the same caddy with you because he learns your game within
yeah,
like the first 3 or 4 holes, and then has your game perfected by the end of the round. So the shack, the way it works is like, if you're new, so if you've been here like 10 years or more, you're just gonna get scheduled all
yeah,
the time, pretty much year round. If you're new, you're going to free agent a lot. In the summer, from like May 1st through the most of October, you'll get scheduled. And then come November 1st, you're not going to get scheduled at all. If you want work, you're going to go in and you're going to sit for multiple hours and hope that they give you a job. And you
hmm,
might not get one the next day. You might have to come back. You might have to sit for 2 or 3 days before
yeah,
you get scheduled a job. That's especially if you're new.
yeah.
because I've been there for so long, they're going to prioritize like veterans or senior caddies who have been there a long time. They're like, oh, I mean, you've been here 13 years, like you're going to be working this week. If you want to work, you're going to work, right?
So how it works now that you're sort of a more senior caddy, you have a booking system where you basically choose your days off kind of thing, and then you expect them to find you work 36 holes a day for the days that you're available. Is that right?
Pretty much. I mean, I'm not going to go 36 every single day. However, in the summer, on average, we'll go 36 4 or 5 times a week. And then another thing I can do is if I do have an 18 in the morning, I can just put my name on the free agent list and be like, I'll tee off at 7:20. Do you have anything for the afternoon? If I really want to like grind and get extra loops.
So when someone asks you, like, what's it like being a caddy? What do you say?
It's definitely different. Like I don't have a regular schedule, So the problem with some of that is like, if I want to make a doctor's appointment, I have to take off the whole day.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I can make a doctor's appointment in the morning and then go tell the shack, hey, I can work anytime after 11. But if they just don't have a good fit for a job, then I'm just not working that day.
It's not as easy to balance the day-to-day responsibilities.
It's not.
Even though, you're often teeing off in the morning, it sounds like, oh, it's a 5-hour workday, not an 8-hour workday. Is that misunderstanding?
That's true for sure. Like I teed up at 8:20 and I was done by 12:20 and I was home by 1.
Yeah, so you have to know what you're getting into when you're choosing life as a caddy. And I guess these are some of the downsides of it or upsides. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, one thing we tell each other is like, you don't count your chickens before you hatch.
Yeah.
Because you walk up even to go meet your players and then we call it a ghost loop when you get up there and then nobody actually takes you. And you just drove to work, sat at the shack for an hour, spent gas, got ready, packed your lunch, whatever, and you're just like not working. It's just time to go home now. Or sit around for 4 hours and then, you got there at 7 and then you don't tee off till 11 and then you're done at 4. You're like, damn it. So like that stuff definitely happens and it's really frustrating. And it's like cold and nasty. So like when it's dark till 8 a.m., and it's pissing rain and blowing, you don't want to get up and go to work. You have to make yourself get up and go. So that's hard,
This sounds like a career in sales, in like doing sales and doing road shows, because like, people are going to ghost you. People are going to need to see you at specific times. You don't necessarily know when your next regular paycheck is coming. Like there are tens of millions of people that choose professions like that actually they have a suitable personality for life as a caddy, to be honest.
Well, so I can set my price. So like my referral clients, anybody who direct contacts me, I have like a flyer that I sent out.
Yeah.
You know, we do have a minimum standard at the resort, but like when I tee off with a new guest, I don't even know how much I'm making that day.
Yeah.
Until they
interesting.
It's $100 a bag plus gratuity. But like at Bandon, they just haven't really perfected their policy there yet because they won't tell you how much gratuity is and they won't tell you how much the industry standard is and they won't tell you how much to pay us. And then they just got to figure it out. And then like I had these great guys from Texas that was their first time there. They've never had caddies and they gave us $120. And so when we get a $20, I'm like, am I a waitress at a Waffle House?
Yeah.
I think your waitress made more than me. And I just walked around with your bags for 4 hours. And so this is where Mama Bear steps in. I'm like, nope, nope. So I go to the office and then the caddy manager comes back and kind of alludes them to the industry standard, which is actually 50%. And then they feel bad. I'm like, this doesn't need to happen. You could have just told them or put industry standard on the website or anywhere.
Yeah, like nobody wants to stiff a caddy, right? Yeah. Interesting.
And it's like, they just won't. But, 150 is our average. I mean, we oftentimes make more than that, but we
that's take home. So but that's like 150 in your pocket.
Yeah. Because we're all independently kind of. We actually pay an annual fee to work there. It's not very much, but it just like covers our building and stuff. And then everything else is directly from the player to us, and nothing goes through the resort.
Yeah. Has anyone offered you on your deathbed that you would achieve total consciousness?
So I got that going for me.
So are the Caddyshack quotes just flying when you're out there?
Oh, yeah.
Or what's the banter like typically?
Well, when the weather gets bad, the bath's not coming in for an hour.
Yeah. What are the types of golfers that you get?
Most of the guys are cool. Usually it's like one guy in a group who's kind of like, we're like, why do you bring this guy? As independent contractors, we do not have to put up with shit. So that's nice, but we really got to choose when we do and don't do that. I mean, I've really only fired 2 guests in my entire career where I went into the shack and been like, I refuse to carry for this human. And one of the guests, it wasn't even the guest. It was the other 3 guys in his group. I said, I can't be with these rickshaws. We call them rickshaws when they take a, like a pull cart. Here's the reality. If you take a push cart or you carry your own bag, you just sent me a message. You do not want my info or services. So do not send me and give me that message and then begin to ask me 1,000 questions about what's this doing? What's the yardage on this part 3? How does this putt break? Should I play this uphill? I don't know, bro. Ask your caddy, the rickshaw.
What are, say, your do's and your don'ts as a golfer to properly treat a caddy?
Okay. Do lighten your bag. Only bring what you're using for the day, not for the trip.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a caddy watching your ball and where it went into the bush or where it happened, you're going to get your ball back.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying you don't lose balls out there, but our average handicapper is 22. And rarely do we have an occasion where we need to bring more than 6 balls.
Yeah.
I mean, I pretty much won't carry more than 9.
Yeah.
I won't do it. And reality is if we lose all those, I can find you more on the course. I know where they all are. You don't care what kind of ball you're playing at that point.
Yeah.
You don't care. Is it round and white with dimples? Yeah, it's yours. Here you go. Like actually in my printout, I say, if you want to completely stuff your cart bag and bring it to me, I am perfectly fine with that. But then we're going to take a change out bag because we have hundreds of change out bags at the resort. And we're just going to put what we need for the day in the change out bag. And I'm going to
Oh, interesting. So that's something that's a lot easier for you to carry. So if you just get like an absolute shite bag that it didn't fit per purpose, you can actually just ask them to switch bags. It's going to make your life a lot easier.
We do a lot. We don't carry Nikes. We don't carry OGOs. We don't carry single slotted bags. We don't.
What's a single slotted bag?
Like each club has a slot.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we don't. That actually takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to find the slot when you're I mean, it's like a process. And those particular bags are heavier. Every time it rains, I change out a pink pepper because those bags are cloth and they take on 10 pounds with water. And then you have a wet, stinky bag in your room. Like, just grab a change out.
I'm doing you a favor. Yeah.
Get a change out because they're all waterproof. And your stuff is going to be completely dry when you get back.
Fascinating.
You know, including your golf bag. But people are really attached to their bling and their stuff, you know? Or we get these big leather bags and he's like, well, I just bought this. It's like, well, I didn't ask you to buy this shit before you came here. You know?
Okay, so what else as a golfer should I be mindful of with my caddy?
You really don't ever want to show up to the course with iron covers on. My poor guy from Texas had him, and I like shook his hand to meet him, and then I immediately started to roast him.
But Aaron Rye uses iron covers on the DP World Tour. Doesn't that a signal that you just love your clubs and you want them to have longevity?
You're a massive head case that you have. You need therapy. Like, there's stuff going on there. There's a lot of stuff going on there. We're like red flag all day. You know, 2 putters, red flag. Don't want to deal with you. So really, our caddy trifecta is fast golf, light bags, and heavy pay.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing which we tend to deal with like in a joking way, like we tend to diffuse and deal with, is when they question it's like, hey, I've never been here. I've never played links golf. I've never played in the elements. And then like everything you're saying, I'm like, it's 130, but we need a 170 club. And they're like, really? Really? That's what you think? And I'm like, dude, I'm not playing the really game. In fact, we jokingly charge for those. I'm like, $5. Oh, that's 10, 15. And I love the wow factor. I love that they're so like, you got to be kidding me. Like, that's my favorite part is the wow factor, but also do not argue me on every And I say two things. I'm like, you know what? You do whatever you want. Number
Yeah.
one, this is the advice I have. You hit whatever the fuck you want. But I always say it's just advice. You don't have
Yeah.
to take it. You just have to pay for it. So I don't really
Yeah.
care.
Brilliant.
You know?
That's great. I should use that one in my career.
Yeah.
How about the relationship between a caddy and a golfer?
That is the most intense relationship I have ever experienced. I mean, you get these people and you've known them several days and they're like, I would trust you with my life. Also, you're in my will. And you're like, some of our biggest bonds are with people who, for some reason, they end up, I call it like verbal vomit. It's like they don't know you, but they've just had this like life event. And so you end up talking about some serious stuff with people and it just like kind of bonds you to the core immediately because, maybe your son went through something that his son went through or like whatever it is,
And you've had a lot of experiences in your lifetime in many different disciplines and industries and places to connect with people on.
Well, that's a true story. I mean, a lot of golfers are fly fishermen. So there's always that. Or like the health thing. I mean, my background with health and science, we get into conversations about that, so those things can be really bonding too. It's pretty wild. Some of the connections sometimes.
Tips for caddies. To be a good caddy or to have a good long career as a caddy, what's your advice?
Well, I mean, I think our shirt says like, shut up, show up, and keep up. And I think that's pretty relevant. The keep up part really could be worked on. And what I mean by that is like, you should be at the ball before the player and you should know what it's doing before you got there. And I know that's not always the easiest thing to do, but the most frustrating thing that I hate hearing is when a customer comes to me and says, I don't like double bag caddies because they can't get to my ball on time. Well, I know whoever they had was not good enough to do it.
So there are absolutely skills. So just like if you want to be polite to the group in front and behind you, there are ways to play ready golf. There are ways to be a ready caddy, basically. There are a lot of techniques.
To be a ready caddy, for sure.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, and we deal a lot with like subtle and context messaging. So like we don't want to tell our players to hurry up.
Yeah.
We'll be like, oh, he doesn't even have a club yet. We should play ready golf and go first. Because like honors golf absolutely does not work on these courses. They're too long to walk. You cannot wait for your friend. We can't all play kindergarten soccer and hang around the same ball and then all move to the next ball. Because these guys are drinking, they're on vacation, they're not paying attention to time, they don't realize that they need to keep moving, and it's just like a subtle message that we're going to keep moving. Nobody told anybody to hurry, but they kind of like, oh, we got to keep going.
So your skills as a caddy, it's about being able to subtly cue people. Like this is a people skill business, it's sounding like, right? This is a sales and service and people skills and psychology business. Those are the real skills you need to have, not just green reading, not just understanding wind and yardage. So Sara Jo, that's your life as a day-to-day professional caddy at a bucket list golf course. But you also mentioned that you are beginning to caddy more and more for professional players in professional paid tournaments.
Well, I'm going to correct you. I've only carried for amateurs in professional tournaments, which is like the Pro-Am, like the Desert Classic. Yep. That is honestly a dream of mine to carry for a professional golfer, to be heavily invested in one person's game would be amazing. I have had offers for LPGA for females. And the reason why I've turned it down is it tends to be a money issue. It's a money issue for them. They're not getting, unless they're the top one, they're probably not getting paid enough. They have a hard time. The ones that I asked were like, just like lower into the totem pole, I had to say, on the LPGA, and like they had a hard time committing to money or I mean they can't do a weekly rate, and so at that point it's hard because I can make way more at Bandon. But man, if I had a player that I could invest in, that is kind of the dream. Being an observer and being a scientist, I collect data. I spend so much time collecting data that for me to be able to collect data on a player and apply that to a professional, I mean, I really just think that that outcome could be pretty spectacular.
So how do you think you can angle yourself into that? Obviously, you have connections to carry for amateurs, but if you carry for more amateurs in pro-ams, you're building relationships with pro golfers and other pro caddies. And hey, this guy's I want to retire. I want to, pursue a different career. My golfer is going to need a pro caddy. I love your vibe. Yeah, is that maybe kind of the serendipitous sort of like
Absolutely.
that connection that you're hoping to get that might launch you on that career path?
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that has so many, so many pans in the fire, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you're talking about is 100% how it happens. When I carried in probably call it the Bob Hope Classic, a few years that I carried on that tournament, I had every time I was in a round, one of the professional golfers at the end, one or more, came up and like when we're shaking hands at the end, literally complimented me on my caddying. And a couple of them have been like, hey, maybe if I hear of somebody who's looking for someone, I can give your name. And it's like, so I think what you're saying is I need to just do that more. And the more that happens, eventually you're going to be like, she seems really solid. Every time I've been around with her, she's just been spot on. When my gal won like a net division, she was 38 under par.
Wow.
For 4 days. Like when a player has a long-standing, really good relationship with his caddy and he trusts him all the time, because that's different because see, at Bandon, I can just like kind of call the shots. But these players are professionals. They know their game. They know how they can manipulate a club. And so it's just not always going to be like, better.
Yeah.
It's like a balance between, do you know better this time or does he know better this time? And so like, if you can get into that groove of trusting each other when I'm putting my foot down, I know this isn't going to work.
That would be super awesome. To have a pro caddy, a pro paid caddy, when you make it on the PGA Tour or the top golfer on the LPGA Tour or whatever it is, hopefully you'll come back to the pod and you'll remember the little guy that maybe helped you.
But you don't. But you don't interview those people. You only interview
you're right. You're right. I may have to rebrand the channel. So the other thing that I want to talk about is your own personal journey as a golfer. And actually, this is how you and I met. Before this channel was the FLG Golf Podcast, it was something called Fucking Love Golf, which is what FLG stands for. And that was me and a bunch of mates who we have an awesome group here in Singapore where we travel the region. We play a lot in Singapore. My wife didn't want to see as many videos of me shotgunning beers on my personal Instagram. So she's like, can you put that somewhere else, please? So we made a Fucking Love Golf Instagram page. And, years later, it became, something that I wanted to build this podcast off of. And I've kind of piggybacked. And back when it was just at Fucking Love Golf, I met a few friends of yours, Karen Amistoy. And she actually bought one of our polos. Yeah, the den mother of something that you call the Sand Tramps.
Yes.
And also Sarah Smoods, who lives in Vancouver, which is not far from where I call home. She also bought an awesome polo. And obviously following Sand Tramp Golf, I learned that you were a caddy, which is something that I've always wanted to learn more of. So I reached out to you, and that's how sort of we are connected. But tell us about the Sand Tramps and what this is and what it is to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's really important to me because I have struggled my entire life to make female friends. I've always worked in male-dominant industries, and that comes with a lot of problems because if you're liked by your coworkers, then there's a chance that their wife doesn't like that you're liked. So it's been hard to make, and then even some of the gals who are always been so sweet and great, maybe they don't golf or they don't fish. And so we don't do things together a lot because we don't share the same interests. It's not because I'm choosing to not hang out with females. It's because the
Mhm.
percentage of females that I come into contact with versus males is under 10%,
Wow.
right? And then I'm supposed to get along with all under 10% of that. It just became tough.
Yeah.
So Sarah and I met on Instagram. You know, I thought her account was cute and funny.
Yeah.
So we just kind of were like, hey, you're a nice girl that isn't tearing other girls down. Hey, so are you. Maybe we should golf together. And then it was like we were both going to be at the waste management tournament. We hung out. We had the best time ever. We're like, okay, we're forever friends. Like, this is always happening. And then she was like, we should get a group of girls together. Like, we met online. I know a couple girls. I actually, one of the girls on there, Susan, was a gal I caddied for. Her and her now husband had hit me up several years ago, probably like 7 years ago. And they were like, hey, your vibe on Instagram is cool. We want to take you as a caddy. Is that weird? I'm like, no. And so I cared for them, and we end up having literally one of the best weeks of my entire life. We had so much fun. And so I just said, well, I don't know a lot of gals, but I do know one gal. So she's in our group, and then we just kept kind of, you know, she's found a lot of them on Instagram. Sarah has.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of like vet them. We're like, does she seem cool? She seems cool. I do, you know.
Are you going to test her out? You're going to
chat.
take her out for an 18 somewhere and see what
Yeah,
she's
yeah, and vet her.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly how it goes down. Vet it. And then like somebody's like, no, she's cool. And we're like, okay, all right, she's in, you know, and it's really worked out so far. And I mean, this is the most girlfriends I've ever had. I mean, I'm probably the least chatty in the group chat. There's a group chat going, and sometimes I open it and I'm like, I can't even.
I can't deal with 61 unread messages, you guys. Yeah. I'll just be there at the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I miss it, you know, I miss the major stuff in there, but it's, you know, I mean, go look all over the country for these people. That's how it is, you know?
Yeah. And when you find them, like, stay attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to hear that, because golf's a weird game. It's not for everybody, right? And, you know, especially kind of living out here in Asia, it is hard to find people not only who golf, but also want to golf in the way that you do. And sort of that group of dudes that we have, they're the best friends that I'll ever have, because I can be myself around them, but also get the spiritual fulfillment of golf, you know, that I'm looking for elsewhere. And it actually, I can measure the quality of my life really in the number of rounds of golf that I play in a year with these people. And it's spiritually rejuvenating every time that I do.
Well, and I think what I love about these girls is, I mean, I sometimes joke that golf is secondary. I mean, we're playing the full AT, we're hitting all the shots. But like in between, like we're literally looking around for nonsense. What can we do? Oh,
Yeah.
55 parking cones.
I'm going to climb this tree.
You know, it's just, oh, we can climb. Like our group is actively looking for shenanigans during the round, and most people don't do that.
What is your beverage of choice on the golf course, or beverages of choice?
It's funny you say that. My beverage of choice. I'm ready. Oh, if I was going to have a beverage, it would be a beach.
Ooh. What is it?
My favorite thing ever. They should just sponsor me in general for
grapefruit
anything.
hibiscus.
Because all I do is push this stuff. And I'll tell you why. Because there's like B vitamins, omegas. There's all sorts of things in here. There's no residual sugars. And the big difference is the residual sugars in alcohol are like the big deteriorators, cellular deterioration. It's got probiotics in it on top of it. It's a raw kombucha mushroom.
And I would say don't knock the hibiscus. I love fruity beers, and I can tell you probably the craft beer festival comes here to Singapore every year. One of the best ones that I've ever had is a hibiscus beer.
I'm telling you, you can drink these and then you wake up with no hangover. You can drink them during the day. Like for me, if I have a drink during the day, I have to take a nap later.
Yeah.
I just like, if I don't have this, I'm just not drinking because I don't like what it does to my body. It's not healthy. So there are other brands, but this one is the only one that uses fresh juice, and you have to keep them refrigerated, which is why not every store carries them, because you have to refrigerate them. And there's several other brands like Giant and Kyla, but they all have like preservatives and they're like shelf stable and they don't taste the same. And I won't even deal with them. This is like the only thing I'll touch.
Great, Recco. I'm going to keep my eyes open for
these
that.
are-
Sara Jo, thank you so much for the time that you spent with me today and letting me into your world as a caddy, as a woman in golf, as a fly fisher person, as a professional fly fisher. And it's awesome to hear about your journey in all those things. Tell the people where to find you, Sara Jo. Shout out all your Instas.
Looper on the Fly is my golf Instagram so that my fishing sponsors don't get angry when I have shenanigans. And then Sara Jo Flies is my fishing one, but they're linked to each other.
And also at @sandtramps_golf for adventures in golf. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the Sand Tramp Golf for sure. And then I'm on Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube Music is Sara Jo. And then I think there's also a Sara Jo Flies YouTube that has some fishing and golf videos.
I'll link to those in the description as well, but absolutely. And best of luck in every different endeavor. I'm so happy that you joined us, and thank you for basically letting me into your world.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching the FLG Golf Podcast. Subscribe to come on this journey with us. If you want to watch another full episode, click here. If you want to watch a playlist of our best of each full episode, click here.